Hi, everyone. My name is Liz Munoz-Schaefer. I take the pronouns she, her. I'm the senior producer of virtual storytelling here at National Audubon Society. Today, we're coming to you live across YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook from the Discovery Center's 7th Annual Community Day in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And today, I'm speaking with Keith Russell from Audubon Mid-Atlantic. Keith, would you mind introducing yourself to our audience?
Yes. Hi, everybody. As I said, I'm Keith Russell, and I work for Audubon Mid-Atlantic as Program Manager for Urban Conservation. And welcome. It's great to be here and talk about the wonders of bird migration.
Yeah, thank you so much, Keith. So let's dive into some questions. And anyone watching live has any questions, please send us a comment and we'll try to answer some. So let's just start off with where we are. Keith, would you mind describing like where the Discovery Center is situated and like what kind of habitat it provides for migrating birds?
So the Discovery Center is a 40-acre site and geographically located pretty much in the center of the city of Philadelphia. So we're about equidistant from the northern, southern, and eastern, western borders of the city. And within Philadelphia, we are also located within one of the large city parks. It's called East Park, and it's located on the east bank of the Schuylkill River. And within East Park, we're also located within a site called the East Park Reservoir, which is a city-owned site, which was created in the 1880s. And it's about 100 acres, and Discovery Center takes up about 40 acres of that site. And on site, we have a 37-acre lake, and that lake is surrounded by forest and meadow habitat. So we have a lot of great habitat here, water birds and land birds. And of course, since we're within East Park, there are lots of birds all around the Discovery Center, as well as right here on the site.
Awesome. And then could you tell us like the Discovery Center's like origin story? Like how did the reservoir look before it became what it is today?
So again, the Discovery Center is at the East Park Reservoir, and the reservoir was created in response to a really severe drought that occurred in the 1860s here in Philadelphia. And in response to that, the city said, we need to have a way of storing water so we can have water all the time. So that was planned during the 70s, and then between 1881 and 1889, this center, or not the center, but this site was constructed. And again, it's 100 acres. So when it was originally made, it was just basically concrete, and there was no landscaping really there. And it stayed for a long time. And then after the 1950s, the city's population slowly began to decline. There were not as many businesses using water, not as many people, and the city just didn't need as much water storage. So portions of the site began to be decommissioned, and by the 90s, the city was only using about half the site. So in the early 2000s, when Audubon began work to create the Discovery Center here, a lot had happened, and nature had kind of reclaimed the areas that were decommissioned, and there were lots of trees, lots of vegetation, and it looked pretty much the way it does now. So nature came in and returned to a natural condition.
And then like what has changed, I think, with the location since the Discovery Center and Audubon has like been involved with the area?
Well, since we've been here, we've been able to do a lot of work to try to manage the vegetation to control non-native species that are here. That's been a real goal of ours to make the site sort of a place for the use of native plants, which are really, really beneficial for native birds. And of course, we operate this site with another organization, the Philadelphia Outward Bound School. So both organizations have programming that occurs here, and we work together on some of that programming as well. So it's a great collaborative project. We embarked on, and I think that it works very well. So both of us are interested in nature and introducing people to nature. And we have a lot of programming that we're doing here, and it's evolving together in that school.
So. Yeah, and I feel like you're such a great entry into like loving nature and learning how to, or wanting to like learn more about like your natural environment. So I'm wondering like how many, like what kinds of birds do people expect to see, like what if they were to come to the Discovery Center?
So that's a great question. A lot of times people think that cities are places that birds don't really go, where there are not that many birds in cities, and that's certainly not true of Philadelphia. So here in the city, we usually see about 275 different species of birds each year, and over 300 species have been recorded historically. So here at the Discovery Center, since we have aquatic habitat as well as upland habitat, deciduous forest habitat, meadow habitat, we've recorded about 176 species over the last decades. And that number just goes up each year. So I'm sure in a couple of years that will be closer to 200. Um, there's just a lot of different types of birds that are.
Yeah, I mean, like what would this space look like to like a migrating bird, to a bird like coming through on its journey, ending up in like South America?
Well, there are so many different types of species. Birds that are looking for water will come here. We have waterfowl in the winter. They're mostly ducks, and of the ducks that occur here, most of them are diving species since the lake here is about 8 feet. It's pretty deep. And there are also lots of geese that loaf here on the lake. But other types of water birds that come through that are looking for habitat include herons, and there's bald eagles, there's ospreys, there's kingfishers, and sometimes we have rails, and sometimes we have shorebirds. So those are some of the water birds that we get here. And then there's a whole range of land birds, there's raptors, there's all kinds of songbirds and so on, woodpeckers, flycatchers that all come through here. And each of them is looking for a particular type of habitat, and they all find that here. So it's a really nice variety of species that you can find here at the site.
Yeah, and then we're talking about how they fly these long distances, and this is like a nice this space able to provide so many different types of habitat for them. What kind of challenges do these migrating birds face? Like what to take a step back.
Well, I'm going to preface that by saying that there are a lot of birds. It's not just a lot of variety of species, but there are a lot of birds that come through our area. Again, some people think that birds avoid cities, but we know from the use of weather radar, which has the potential or the capacity to distinguish birds that are migrating from rain and snow and insects, that there are about 40 to 50 million birds that migrate through the city every year, more of them in the fall than in the spring. And that's a lot of birds.
That is a lot of birds.
And we also know that the birds that pass over this site are pretty, they're in the millions. And we know that also because before the Discovery Center was built back in 2012, Audubon was already doing work at this site. And one of the projects that we did was a research study about bird migration. And we collaborated with a researcher from Fordham University and the American Bird Conservancy on that site, on that project. And that was done using a short-range radar unit, which has the potential to track individual birds. And so during the last 2 weeks of September, 2-week period, that radar unit tracked 735,000 individual birds passing over the Discovery Center. And that was between sunset and sunrise. So those were only birds migrating at night. That didn't include the birds that come through during the daytime migrating. So we know that there are millions of birds. So when they come through a place like Philadelphia, they're looking basically for places to rest and to feed, but there may be challenges that they face. And the fact that most birds migrate at night is important because when they migrate at night, they need to be able to find their way. And one of the cues that they use is the pattern of the stars. So they're very sensitive to light, and artificial light at night can be very distracting to them. So when they see lights from buildings or coming out of buildings or street lights, the sky glow can all be attractive to them and bring them into cities and bring them into contact with various things that they might collide with. That include buildings, communication towers, even transmission lines. So those are some of the barriers that birds face when they're coming through cities. Of the birds that don't get killed by those things, there are predators that may be trying to get these birds, and that includes peregrine falcons. In cities, they will actually sit on the tops of tall buildings at night and they will hunt birds that they can see flying through the lights of those buildings, and the birds can't see them. So predators are here. There's also predators in the form of domestic cats. Cats will patrol buildings that birds collide with just to get those birds that are injured or are killed. So the birds that escape the cats and the collisions now have to find places to rest and feed. So it's important that birds have habitat for them to be able to use, and that habitat is high quality habitat. And usually the best habitat is habitat that has a lot of native plants in them. So those are some of the things that birds are going to face when they're migrating. And then I think another thing that is particularly important with regard to climate change is the fact that storms can be very harmful to birds. And if you have more storms and more intense storms from climate change, that can be a problem. And one example of that happened here in 2022. I believe Hurricane Ian, which was a really massive hurricane, passed north through the Mid-Atlantic region. And it was, I guess, a tropical depression by the time it got here. But it was here for a couple of days, and it was just cloudy and overcast. And there's a bird, the chimney swift, which is a native species. They were still migrating through our area, and they feed on aerial insects. And I think that was really a problem for them, because during that period, we found about 16 dead chimney swifts in the downtown area, something we never find. Probably more died, and we took all these birds, and they were all severely underweight. So we think that they probably starved to death because they just couldn't feed during this hurricane. So those are some of the many challenges that birds are dealing with as they're migrating these long distances.
Yeah, and then, to go back to the idea of this being a city and the birds really being attracted to the lights and everything that's going on, those tall buildings. Can you tell us a little bit about what's being done in response to those challenges, specifically in the Philadelphian context?
So here in Philadelphia, Audubon has been really involved in trying to provide safe passage for migrants. And I think we're doing that by trying to make sure that habitat is restored and managed in ways that's really going to be favorable to bird survival, and doing restoration work at various sites in the city. And we're also trying to help prevent birds from flying into buildings. And that work is being spearheaded now by an organization called Bird Safe Philly, which formed in 2020 after we had a mass collision that involved maybe up to 1,500 birds here. And Audubon is part of that. That is Audubon Mid-Atlantic. Also 2 Audubon chapters, the Liberty Bird Alliance and Valley Forge Audubon Society are part of Bird Safe Philly, as well as the Academy of Natural Sciences, which is our main museum, Natural History Museum, and the Delaware Valley Ornithological Club, which is our main bird club. So all of us have representation on Bird Safe Philly, and Bird Safe Philly is conducting monitoring in the downtown area to get information about birds colliding with buildings. So any dead birds that are found are donated to the Academy of Natural Sciences. Injured birds are taken to rehab, and we're also doing retrofits of collision-prone buildings. So if a building has a lot of collisions, we're working with those buildings to put patterns on the glass of those buildings or the windows to prevent birds from flying into them. And we also manage or coordinate a project called Lights Out Philly, which basically asks building owners to turn off lights at night so that birds won't be attracted and fly into them. It's a lot of work, and a lot of volunteers are involved. So I'm always just amazed and feel so grateful that here in Philly we have so many people that are passionate about this and are involved in this work.
Yeah, I was just going to say that sounds like it's like a large coordinated effort, and I feel like people generally don't like to necessarily change their ways. So I'm wondering what has inspired you about working in urban conservation in Philadelphia, and what keeps you going in this line of work?
Well, I grew up in Philadelphia, so it's my home. And I've always been keen on sharing my interest in birds with other people. And in urban areas, you have more people than you have in other areas, and you have a greater variety of different types of people. So it's an opportunity to engage and talk and share with so many different types of people and involve so many different types of people in conservation work. And that doesn't just include people of different races and ethnicities. sexual orientations, gender identities, whatever. It includes also businesses. There are big businesses here like Comcast, which is directly involved in Lights Out Philly, and they're doing conservation work by participating in that. There's big real estate companies that are involved in Lights Out. They're doing conservation work. It just gives you goosebumps sometimes to think that that is happening, here in the city. So that's part of what makes me excited. But I think it's not just about the birds, it's also about the people. You have people of different political viewpoints coming together. Birds are not political, and they just bring people together. And in the bird space, all those things get put aside, and we can sort of, congeal about that, around that. So
Yeah,
it's really exciting.
It is really exciting. There's just birds are really great because even like I'm from New York City. But I still see birds every day. Like I have like this mourning dove that lives in my neighbor's garden, and I like to see them. My cat and I like to bird watch together when we see it. But they really are like an invitation to learn more
Kind of
about where
magic,
you are.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think nature in general is like that, but birds in particular speak to us very powerfully.
Yeah, and I know that our audience members like love birds, and they love, they want to know what they can do to make, their journeys easier. What can they do to support migrating birds on these like long, fantastic journeys?
Yeah, that's another good question. And, all of us do have the potential to help birds. And I think one of the things that we have to think about is keeping cats indoors. Although a lot of people like to let cats out and let them roam around, that cats kill lots and lots of birds. So keeping cats indoors is important. If you feed birds, it's important to have sort of a tube feeder rather than a tray feeder, because when birds are on a tray feeder, they can poop in that seed, and that can spread all kinds of diseases, and it can kill lots and lots of birds. So protecting birds from disease is something you can do by having having tube feeders rather than tray feeders. Also, putting your bird feeders within 3 feet of your windows is important, because if birds are spooked by something, they'll maybe fly into your window, but not at as great a speed as they would to kill themselves. So if their feeder were 20 feet away, they might get up enough speed and fly into your window and die. I think also providing habitat in terms of native species of plants is really good. Trying to provide shrubs as well as trees for species that like to feed on the ground. And, just being cognizant of the fact that if you're living in a house with a lot of windows, birds can fly into those windows. So there are products that you can buy to put on the glass that will prevent birds from flying into them.
Yeah.
That's a lot of things.
There's a lot of
things.
You can pick and choose. It all helps.
I can mention one other thing that's important in our area. Here in Pennsylvania, West Nile virus is still out there, and it is killing a lot of birds. And it has depressed the populations of even common species like the tufted titmouse and the Carolina chickadee, and of course one of our important birds, the ruffed grouse. So this is spread by mosquitoes, and a lot of these mosquitoes are breeding in people's gutters and abandoned swimming pools and cans and things in people's yards, and people are not aware that that's a really critical link for West Nile virus. So getting rid of that stuff, all that standing water, is a very powerful way of you protecting birds in your area, even common birds like the tufted titmouse.
Yeah. And then I know that the Discovery Center has like 4 different types of like anti-collision window treatments. Would you mind quickly going through those? Because I feel like they're really helpful to know like what's actually helpful for preventing window collisions.
So we did a lot of work when we designed this building to make sure that it wasn't going to be dangerous to birds, because we're surrounded by all this natural habitat. And we put cords in front of most of the windows. These are just power cord that you can buy at a hardware store. I put them all up myself, so that was easy. I'm not an engineer. All you have to do is sort of string them in front of your window, and they're spaced every 4 inches apart. And we just haven't had any birds hitting our windows, except when those cords were taken down. And the minute they're taken down, a bird will go into them. And then that happens sometimes when you have to do maintenance on the windows. We also have vinyl dots that have been put on some of the windows, and that's a commercial product you can buy. I'm not going to give the name of the company, but if you look up those, you can find them. And we have some glass that was installed in some of the doors and other parts of the building that is acid etched, so it has stripes etched on the outer surface of the glass. and those appear as barriers that the birds don't want to fly into. And then at our other center here in Pennsylvania, the John James Audubon Center, we have perforated vinyl film on most of the windows there, and that's the same material that buses are wrapped in.
Yeah.
You can see through it from the inside. From the outside, it looks opaque. And we have some other windows there that have sort of film with white stripes in them, and the birds aren't flying into that as well.
Yeah.
So we really didn't want to have a center where we're killing birds, and we're supposed to be here to protect birds.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's such a great example of the ways that people can bring these like techniques home to try to like help prevent bird collisions in their own home.
Absolutely.
Well, I have one last question. Do you have a favorite bird or like a special bird story or spark bird that you would mind sharing with us?
Well, I don't think I have a spark bird, but I think my favorite birds are warblers, which are little songbirds. They're a couple dozen species here in the eastern part of North America, and they're really small. They're very brightly colored. They have beautiful patterns, and they have really interesting high-pitched songs. And I like challenges, so they can be very challenging to identify. There's a term called warbler neck, which people say you get if you're trying to look at warblers all the time because they're so high in the tree, but they're beautiful. And when you finally do see one, after you've been watching and waiting for that bird to move behind that leaf, they're so beautiful, it makes it worth it. So.
Yeah, no, I have like many a time I've been like, yeah, I see it. And then, but when you actually do see it, it is such a transformative experience. It's really beautiful.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in today. And thank you, Keith, again for joining us. We'll drop in the comments below where you can keep up to date with Bird Safe Philly and the Discovery Center. To tune into our later tour dates for our Bird Migration Celebration Tour, head to audubon.org/Bird Migration Celebration. And as part of our Bird Migration Celebration, we want to hear the story of your connection with birds. Learn how to share your bird journey with us by visiting audubon.org/mybirdjourney. Thank you so much, and I hope you all have a great day.